A boss decides to fire a senior employee because he believes the employee is no longer capable of doing his job due to his advanced age. However, after doing so, he realizes the huge mistake he made. Brandon had always been a man of simple and routine habits. Since he was young, work had been his priority, something he carried with pride. Born into a modest family, he learned early on the value of responsibility and daily effort. He was never one for grand ambitions or extravagances, but he believed that with dedication, it was possible to build a stable life. When he married Margaret, the love of his life, he promised himself that he would ensure the family's livelihood through the fruits of his hard work. Shortly after the wedding, he began his journey at the bank's assistance company, where he would stay for many years. There was no glamour in his role, but there was something Brandon valued more than that, the certainty that his contribution was important, even if it wasn't recognized every day. Over time, Brandon became an essential figure in the company's operations. His patience, commitment to every task, and willingness to help colleagues were qualities that set him apart. He knew the company like no one else, having lived through all its phases, from more prosperous times to periods of crisis. Over the years, he was promoted several times, always based on his merit and competence. He didn't care much about titles. What motivated him most was knowing that he made a difference. He was the kind of employee everyone wanted by their side, always willing to teach and guide the younger ones. Many sought his advice, and Brandon, with his calm and reserved demeanor, offered words of wisdom that only experience could provide. Despite the monotony that could be stifling for some, Brandon found comfort in predictability. Each day, he followed his familiar path to the office, greeted the same familiar faces, and sat in the same chair he had occupied for years. The office was no longer the same as it had been in his youth. Many old colleagues had moved on, replaced by young, ambitious faces. Still, Brandon had adapted to the changes, always true to his principles and the meticulous way he approached his work. However, changes began to emerge more frequently. Rumors about a new direction started circulating through the halls. They said a young president would be appointed, a man with new ideas and a more modern vision for the company's future. Brandon heard these conversations but didn't pay them much mind. Over the years, many leaders had passed through the company, and he took pride in always having found his place, regardless of who was in charge. So, he decided he would continue doing what he had always done, working with dedication and care, remaining true to the values that had guided him for so long. The arrival of Patrick at the company was marked by an atmosphere of excitement and anticipation. All the employees were curious to meet the new president, a young man known for his ambition and market vision. Early in the morning, the meeting room was set up for Patrick's official introduction. The employees gathered, whispering discreetly as they waited. Brandon was among them, sitting quietly at the back of the room, as he always did at such events. He didn't feel anxious. After all, he had seen many presidents come and go over the years. For him, it was just another day. When Patrick finally entered, accompanied by a group of executives and directors, the murmur of the employees ceased. He was young, impeccably dressed, with a well-fitted suit and a confident posture. "Good morning, everyone," Patrick said, with a determined smile. "I'm very excited to be here today and to lead this company into a new era of success." His words were strong and direct, full of promises of innovation and change. "I know there's a lot of potential here, and I'm ready to explore all the opportunities that await us." Brandon listened attentively, but he wasn't swayed by the excitement. He knew that words like those were common in any leadership transition. What mattered, he thought, was what would happen in the following days and how the promises would be fulfilled in day-to-day life. After the presentation, Patrick began to circulate the room, shaking hands and exchanging quick greetings with some of the employees. When his eyes fell on Brandon, the president paused for a moment. He saw the older man, with gray hair and a serene expression, in contrast to the younger, more dynamic employees. Patrick took a brief pause before continuing his walk, but something in him had already been decided. At the end of the day, Patrick headed straight to the Human Resources Department. He knocked on the door of the HR manager's office. Benjamin, a seasoned man respected by the team. "Benjamin, I'd like to talk for a bit," Patrick said, entering without waiting for an invitation. "Of course, Mr. President," Benjamin replied, closing a file and turning his attention to his boss. "How can I help?" Patrick got straight to the point. "Who is that older man? I saw him today in the presentation, sitting at the back of the room. He must be in his 60s, maybe 70s. Benjamin, surprised by the question, took a few seconds before responding. "Oh, you must be talking about Brandon. He's been with us for over 3 decades. An exemplary employee, everyone here has a lot of respect for him." 3 decades, huh? Patrick frowned, showing little interest in Benjamin's words. "Do you really think someone that age can keep up with the changes I want to implement? Modernization, efficiency, that kind of thing requires energy, vision. I don't think he fits that profile." Benjamin was taken aback. "With all due respect, sir, Brandon is one of the pillars of our team. His experience is invaluable. He knows every detail of the company and has unquestionable dedication." Patrick shook his head, impatient. "Benjamin, with all due respect to your opinion, I don't believe that an employee of that age is indispensable. Speed and innovation are what we need right now. Someone like him can be easily replaced by a new generation, more connected to the current market." The HR manager tried to argue once more. "But he is much more than just an employee. Many of our young people look up to him, and his presence keeps the team united." But Patrick had already made his decision. "It's settled, Benjamin. I want you to bring Brandon in for a meeting. He's being let go. Offer him a good severance package, and do it as soon as possible." Benjamin, reluctant, let out a deep sigh. He knew that no matter how much he argued, Patrick was firm in his choice. "All right, Mr. President," he said, with a heavy expression on his face. Shortly after, Benjamin called Brandon into his office. The old employee entered as always, calmly, unaware of what was to come. "You called for me, Benjamin?" Brandon asked, closing the door behind him. "Yes, Brandon," Benjamin replied, with a serious demeanor. "Please, have a seat. We need to talk." Brandon sat down, sensing the tension in the air. Something was different, and he could feel it. "What's going on?" Benjamin took a deep breath before starting. "Brandon, it's not easy for me to say this. You know how much you're valued here. Everyone has immense respect for you and for your contributions over the years. But, the new president, Patrick, has made a decision." Benjamin paused, avoiding looking directly into Brandon's eyes. "He has decided that it's time to end your journey with the company. You're being laid off." Brandon, surprised, frowned and remained silent for a few seconds, absorbing the news. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. "I understand. May I ask why?" Benjamin, still uncomfortable, replied, choosing his words carefully. "The president believes that for the new phase of the company, we need a younger team, with a profile better suited to the changes he plans to implement. He believes that perhaps you no longer fit into this new model." Brandon didn't react with anger or despair. He simply lowered his head for a moment, thoughtful. When he looked back at Benjamin, he said only, "Thank you for telling me, Benjamin. And thank you for the years here. They were good." Benjamin tried to find something more to say, maybe a word of comfort, but nothing seemed sufficient. "Brandon, I'm really sorry. If it were up to me, this would never happen." Brandon smiled slightly, a smile from someone who understood the cycle of things. "Don't worry about it, Benjamin. Things are as they are." Without another word, Brandon stood up, shook the manager's hand, and with the same serenity with which he had always led his life, left the room, leaving Benjamin with an uncomfortable emptiness. As Brandon walked out of Benjamin's office, he strolled through the hallways of the company he knew so well. Each step echoed memories, each corner brought back reminders of years of dedication. He decided that before leaving, he would say goodbye to all the colleagues with whom he had shared so many journeys. The first was Ryan, one of the youngest, whom he had trained when he first joined the company. "Brandon, you're leaving. I can't believe it," Ryan said, clearly shocked to see the veteran already wearing the expression of someone saying goodbye. Brandon smiled calmly. "Yes, Ryan. My time here has come to an end. But I'm sure you and the other young ones will handle it just fine. The company is in good hands. But, you're irreplaceable. Everyone knows that," Ryan insisted. "Don't worry, kid. Life goes on, and I'm at peace with it. You all will do a great job, I'm sure." Brandon continued on his way, greeting other employees with whom he had closer ties. He came across Michelle, one of the oldest secretaries, who always helped him with the bureaucratic processes. "Brandon, what they're doing to you is ridiculous. How can they let you go like this?" "Don't be like that, Michelle," Brandon said, trying to reassure her. "I'm fine, really. It's been good years here. I have a lot to be thankful for." Eventually, Brandon ran into Patrick, who was in the hallway, looking distracted by his own thoughts. He approached slowly, and Patrick soon noticed his presence. "Mr. Brandon," Patrick began, perhaps expecting some confrontation, "I know this wasn't easy." Brandon, however, remained calm. "Patrick, I understand your reasons. Companies change, and I know you believe you're doing what's best for the future of the company. I just want to thank you for the opportunities one had here. It's been a time of great learning, and I'm leaving with my head held high." Patrick, visibly uncomfortable, simply nodded. "Thank you for your understanding, Brandon. I wish you luck in your next steps." With the farewell complete, Brandon left the company for the last time. When he got home earlier than usual, Margaret was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Seeing him come in so early, she immediately noticed that something was wrong. "Brandon? What happened? Why are you home so early?" she asked, surprised and with a hint of concern in her voice. Brandon walked over, gave her a gentle kiss on the forehead, and sat down at the table, taking a deep sigh. "Margaret, I was laid off," he said, straightforward but with sadness in his eyes. Margaret, startled, pulled out a chair and sat next to him. "But how can this be, Brandon? After all this time, they fired you. Why?" Brandon looked at his hands, reflecting for a moment. "The new president, Patrick, thinks the company needs a refresh. He believes age is a barrier to keeping up with the changes he wants to make. I was let go." Margaret placed her hand over his, with warmth and understanding. "Oh, my dear, this is so unfair. You dedicated your life to that company. And now they just discard you like this?" Brandon smiled, a sad but serene smile. "I've seen a lot, Margaret. There's no point in fighting against these decisions. They have their reasons, and I won't hold any grudges. Maybe it's a sign that it's time to move on." Margaret, with her tender eyes, squeezed his hand tighter. "Brandon, you've always given your best. No one can take that away from you. And who knows, maybe this is an opportunity for something better. I'm here with you, whatever decision you make." That night, Brandon and Margaret had dinner together, in silence, but with a shared peace, both confident that something new could emerge. The next morning, while sipping his coffee, Brandon's phone rang. On the other end of the line, a polite but direct voice introduced itself. "Good morning, Mr. Brandon. My name is Jeffrey, and I'm the Director of Operations at Rivera Corporations. We've known about you for a long time, and we'd like to schedule a meeting with you. We have a proposal that we believe is irresistible. Could we meet today at a cafe downtown?" Brandon was surprised by the sudden contact but accepted the invitation. "Sure, Jeffrey. Just tell me the time and place, and I'll be there." A few hours later, Brandon arrived at the cafe, where he was promptly greeted by Jeffrey, a man in his 50s, with a professional but friendly demeanor. "Brandon, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person," said Jeffrey, shaking his hand firmly. "We at Rivera Corporations have been following your work for many years. We know how much you contributed to the success of your former company." Curious, Brandon sat down and listened attentively as Jeffrey continued. "You have an impeccable reputation in the industry. And now that you're available, we'd like to seize this opportunity. We want to hire you for an executive position in our company. We believe your experience and efficiency can help us grow even more, especially in competing with your old company." Brandon was silent for a few moments, absorbing the proposal. "And what exactly would the position be?" he asked cautiously. "We want you to join us as the Chief Operating Officer," Jeffrey replied without hesitation. "We offer a competitive salary and benefits that we believe are very attractive. Furthermore, your experience will be a crucial asset for our expansion." Brandon, still surprised by the generous offer, reflected for a moment. He knew this would be a big change, but also an opportunity to show that he still had much to offer. "Jeffrey, I appreciate the trust you're placing in me. I accept the offer." The bureaucratic part was quickly resolved, with contracts signed and all the paperwork formalized that same day. Brandon, who had left his old company without clear hopes for the future, was now employed again, and in a prominent position. When he returned home that night, Margaret was waiting for him at the door. "So, how was the meeting?" she asked eagerly. Brandon, smiling faintly, replied, "I was hired by a competitor. And I think things are going to get very interesting from now on." Brandon adapted to the new company with the same ease and dedication that had characterized him throughout his life. Rivera Corporations quickly became not only his new workplace but a golden opportunity to demonstrate that experience, knowledge, and perseverance were more valuable than any rushed modernization. From day one, he was welcomed with respect and enthusiasm by his colleagues. His name was already known among many, and the team, which initially hesitated to work with someone from such a different generation, soon realized how much Brandon had to offer. The new position of Chief Operating Officer brought challenges, but Brandon rose to every occasion. With a keen strategic vision and years of accumulated experience, he found ways to optimize processes, increase efficiency, and improve client relationships. Under his leadership, the company began to thrive rapidly. Within a few months, profits increased, and operations became smoother. Jeffrey, the director who had hired him, quickly recognized that bringing Brandon on board had been one of the best decisions of his career. "Brandon, you're a gift to us," Jeffrey said in a meeting after seeing the results. "Our company is growing like never before, and a lot of that is due to you." Brandon smiled modestly. "I'm happy to help, Jeffrey. But the team here is very dedicated. I'm just building on the solid foundation you all had already established." Months went by, and while Brandon thrived at Rivera Corporations, the old company where he had dedicated so many years began to crumble. Under Patrick's impulsive leadership, poor decisions began to pile up. Patrick, who had laid off many veteran employees and replaced them with inexperienced young people, underestimated how important institutional knowledge was for success. Strategic errors, combined with a lack of planning, began to erode the company's foundation. Longtime clients, who had trusted in stability and years of expertise, started to migrate to the competition, including the company where Brandon was now employed. Rumors about the crisis at Patrick's company began to circulate throughout the industry. Financial losses were enormous, and employee morale was at an all-time low. Patrick, once so confident, now found himself at a dead end. It was then that, in an act of desperation, he decided to seek out the only person who could save him, Brandon. Patrick knew where to find him and, without hesitation, scheduled a meeting. When Brandon received Patrick's call asking to talk, he accepted politely but already knew that the outcome of this conversation would not bring any great surprises. The next day, Brandon arrived at the agreed-upon location for the meeting, a discreet cafe in the downtown area. He walked in calmly and spotted Patrick sitting at a table in the corner, looking visibly downcast. Patrick's hair, always impeccably styled, was disheveled, and his expression carried the weight of weeks of frustration. "Brandon," Patrick said, quickly rising as he saw him approach. "Thank you for coming." Brandon nodded, greeting him with a firm handshake. "Patrick, what can I do for you?" Patrick gestured for him to sit and then began to speak, straightforwardly. "Brandon, I'll be direct. I made a mistake underestimating you. The truth is, the company is in serious trouble, and I need your help." Brandon, although he knew what was coming, maintained a neutral expression. "Help? How exactly do you expect me to help, Patrick?" Patrick leaned forward in his chair, his eyes pleading. "I need you to come back. Come back to the company. With your experience, we can reverse the damage. I know I was wrong to let you go, and I'm willing to offer you a position that reflects your importance. A good salary, more benefits. I'll do whatever it takes." Brandon was silent for a few seconds, pondering his words. He had anticipated this moment, but hearing Patrick admit his mistakes was something that surprised him. He looked into the young president's eyes and calmly replied, "Patrick, I understand your situation, but my answer is no." Patrick's eyes widened in disbelief. "But, you're saying you don't want to come back?" "I'm offering you a chance to lead the company, to save it." Brandon shook his head. "Patrick, I've already found my place. At Rivera Corporations, I'm respected, valued, and have a significant role. You had the chance to appreciate me, but you chose to let me go without even considering what I still had to offer. I've learned that when one door closes, others open. And today, I'm where I need to be." Patrick leaned back in his chair, visibly shaken. He knew Brandon was right. The decisions he had made months ago now haunted him, and there was no turning back. "But, what am I supposed to do now?" Patrick asked, more to himself than to Brandon. Brandon looked at the young president with empathy. "Sometimes, Patrick, we have to learn the hard way. Maybe this will teach you to value people, not just short-term goals." Silence hung between the two for a few moments. Patrick finally lowered his head. "You're right. I was wrong. And now it's too late." Brandon stood up from the table, taking one last look at Patrick. "I hope you learn from this. Life has a way of teaching us what we need to know. I wish you luck, Patrick." Without another word, Brandon left the cafe, leaving Patrick alone with his thoughts and decisions. Shortly thereafter, Patrick was fired by the board of the company. The financial losses and lack of confidence from the shareholders sealed his fate. The company that had once thrived was on the brink of bankruptcy, and Patrick's reputation in the market was severely tarnished. He, who had started with great ambitions, ended his business journey as an example of how arrogance and a lack of vision can ruin the future of an organization. Meanwhile, Brandon thrived even more at Rivera Corporations. He became not only a pillar in the company but a respected figure throughout the industry. His new position brought him both professional and personal success. He and Margaret, now with more time and stability, were able to enjoy life in a more peaceful way. At home, Brandon maintained the same simplicity as always, but now with the satisfaction of knowing that even after so many years of work, he still had much to offer the world. In the end, the cycle of life that had taken him from one company to another only confirmed what he had always known: dedication and hard work always bear fruit, even when challenges seem insurmountable. And while Patrick faced the consequences of his actions, Brandon moved forward, consolidated and happy, knowing he had made the right choices. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.